Did you ever, Jaden, did you feel the pressures?
You know, yeah, I did. Once I went out into the world and I saw what people, you know, how people feel about my parents, you know, I didn't understand, you know, I'm still understanding more and more every day that
2010 to 2012, I had achieved everything that I had ever dreamed. I was beyond the wildest dreams. I had been blessed beyond anything I can imagine. But nobody in my family was.
For a long time, Will Smith was looked at as one of the safest bets in Hollywood. He even made it a point to talk about how differently he raised his kids, like he had unlocked a better system than everyone else. But as Jaden Smith grew up, that image started to feel fake.
What is your worst nightmare?
My worst nightmare. I don't have nightmares.
I'd probably say his worst nightmare was
she was asking individually. Your worst nightmare and my worst nightmare. You don't get to tell people my worst nightmare.
Okay.
How could you know, Jaden?
This is not about calling Jaden the problem. It's about noticing how his life has slowly pulled back the curtain on parts of Will Smith that were never meant to be seen.
All right, sit down. Stand up.
Okay, I'm really confused by the direction.
I'm the director. Do what I say.
Okay.
Wait, who did his wardrobe?
My pants used to be together.
This is important for Just.
I feel like this is more of a striped shirt thing.
Did somebody bring some clothes for Jaden?
For years, Will Smith had one of the cleanest reputations in Hollywood. Even people who didn't love his movies still saw him as a guy who stayed out of real trouble. That's why the lawsuit filed by Brian Scott Joseph hit differently. It didn't sound like a random internet rumor. It came with details, timelines, and claims that forced people to pause. Brian Scott Joseph is a professional violinist and a former contestant on America's Got Talent. According to his lawsuit, he was hired to work with Will Smith on a tour project. At first, everything looked normal. Then, Joseph claims the relationship started to change. He says Will began using emotional language that felt personal. He describes a pattern where he felt pressure to stay close, stay quiet, and not question what was happening. The lawsuit paints a picture of control, where power and access were used to blur lines. Whether people believe the claims or not, the wording matters. This wasn't described as a misunderstanding. It was described as something that felt intentional. The situation escalated with what Joseph says happened next. He claims that while staying at a hotel during the tour, someone entered his room without his permission. When he returned, he said he found a handwritten note waiting for him. The note suggested someone would be coming back to hang around with him. Joseph says he did not see this as a friendly gesture. He says it felt threatening. That detail is what made many people uncomfortable, not because of what the note said, but because of the situation around it. According to the lawsuit, management dismissed his concerns. He says he was made to feel like the problem. Shortly after, he was fired from the tour. Will's legal team denied every allegation. They said the claims were false and irresponsible. On paper, it became one person's word against one of the biggest stars in the world. That alone would have been a major story. But as soon as the lawsuit became public, other voices started resurfacing. People who had been talking for years suddenly felt relevant again. One of those voices was Jaguar Wright. Jaguar had already been making claims about several figures in the industry, including Will Smith. She alleged that his mentorship program was sometimes used as a cover-up for his inappropriate relationships with other men. She didn't just talk about adults. She included Jaden Smith when discussing long-term emotional harm. Her claims were hard to verify and easy to dismiss at first, but when the lawsuit appeared, people started connecting dots. Then came Brother Bilal, a longtime friend of Will Smith. He claimed that years ago he walked into a room and saw Will in a compromising position with another actor. He also claimed that something serious happened involving Jaden that caused him to leave the family home early.
This is unlike him, right? So I open the door to Dwayne's dressing room, and that's when I see Dwayne and having anal with Will. There was a couch, and Will was bent over on the couch, and Dwayne was standing up, killing him. Murder, like murder. There was murder in there.
Once these stories surfaced, people began re-watching old footage with very different eyes. There are several interviews where Will Smith kisses Jaden on his lips.
You're like, look at kiss my son. Jaden, come on. Are you okay?
At the time, many people brushed it off as a very affectionate dad. But watching them again, some viewers noticed Jaden's body language. He often looks angry. His smile looks forced. His reaction feels delayed. And it looks like he's unsure how to respond. That discomfort became harder to ignore once people started paying attention. It wasn't one clip, it was several, spreading across different years and interviews. Fans began asking whether those moments were really about affection or about control over how their relationship was presented publicly.
You know, I love him, Ellen.
These moments matter because they didn't happen behind closed doors. They happened in front of cameras. Jaden didn't get to decide how those interactions were framed. Millions of people saw them. And once something like that is out there, it never really goes away. When a child grows up without control over their own image, it can mess with how they understand boundaries. If your discomfort is treated like a joke, you learn quickly that your feelings come second. Over time, that can shape how a person tries to take control back. By the time Jaden Smith reached his late teens, people had already decided he was different. His clothes, his interviews, his music, all of it felt designed to confuse people. But the moment that really locked that reputation in came from the way he talked about his relationship with Tyler, the Creator. For some people, this was proof that Jaden was just being honest about who he was. For others, it felt uncomfortable, not because of, but because of how public and one-sided it was. The focus shifted away from who Jaden liked and toward why he needed to say it that way. That question became unavoidable at Camp Flog. In 2018. Jaden was performing in front of a massive crowd. The energy was already high. Then in the middle of it, he grabbed the mic and announced that Tyler, the Creator, was his boyfriend.
I just want to say Tyler, the Creator, is the best friend in the world, and I love him so much. And I want to tell you guys something. I want to tell you, Tyler doesn't want to say, but Tyler's my mother boyfriend, and he's been my mother boyfriend my whole life. Tyler, the Creator, is my boyfriend.
Jaden's public identity started to feel less like self-discovery and more like self-defense. If he stayed unpredictable, nobody could pin him down. To understand why Jaden needed that kind of reaction, you have to go back to the moment he stopped trusting his father. In 2013, Will Smith released After Earth. This wasn't just another movie. This was Will's vision from top to bottom. Will framed the film as a passing of the torch. He talked openly about wanting to set Jaden up for long-term success. In his mind, this was the perfect launch. But Jaden was only 14. That part gets glossed over a lot, especially when the movie costs over $100 million and is marketed worldwide. The pressure wasn't just to perform. It was to justify the faith his father had placed in him.
How were you so able to create your own lane as opposed to just being the son of?
You know, that's something that I tried to do from the very beginning, and it's something that my parents were aware of, and they made us aware of it before, you know, we even found out from other people that there was this expectation on us. They said, hey, people out there in the outside world, they're gonna, you know, say this, and they're gonna say that, you know, you have to live up to our expectations of what we've done and what we've accomplished in our life, and you have to live with that. So we kind of knew that when we were young. And
when After Earth came out, everything fell apart. The movie wasn't just called bad, it was called embarrassing. Jaden didn't escape that criticism. In fact, he became the target. For a kid who had been raised hearing that he was special, this was a shock. Not long after the movie's release, Jaden asked to become legally independent from his parents. He wanted emancipation. That wasn't a teenage tantrum. That was a serious request. A kid asking to separate himself from the people who were supposed to guide him. Will later admitted how much that moment hurt him. He said it shattered him. But the key part is Jaden felt misled. He felt exposed. And he felt like his father's ambition mattered more than his safety.
I'm not going anywhere. The thing that people don't get is everything at his house is free. So I can get anything and everything that I want at his house. So I think I'm gonna be there for 20, 30 more years. But he says as soon as I have a movie that's bigger than one of his movies,
yeah, there ain't no reason to live at my house no more. But
This is where the trust broke. Jaden stopped seeing his father as someone who could protect him. Acting stopped feeling like an opportunity and started feeling like a trap. So he pulled away. He stopped chasing traditional roles. Instead, he built an identity that rejected expectations. That shift explains a lot of what came later. Will and Jada Pinkett Smith leaned even harder into the parenting style they had always defended. They believed rules were limiting. They believed punishment was harmful. Instead of discipline, they focused on conversation. Instead of structure, they gave their kids control over their own lives at a very young age. At first, that sounded progressive. But in real life, especially when fame and money removed normal consequences, that kind of freedom can turn into something else.
We made a very, very, very terrible mistake with our children, and we went with radical honesty. Don't do it. No, listen. It's terrible because they do whatever they want, and they just come tell you.
Will later admitted this approach didn't work the way he thought it would. He openly said that the no punishment rule was a mistake. He realized too late that kids actually need boundaries, not because they are bad, but because they are still learning how the world works. Without limits, everything feels optional, including responsibility. For Jaden, that freedom came early and all at once. He wasn't just given choices. He was given adult-level control, without adult-level grounding. When something went wrong, there wasn't a clear line between what was acceptable and what wasn't. There was just talk. And talk only goes so far when a kid is overwhelmed. Education is where this really showed. Jaden was removed from traditional school. Instead of classrooms, tests, and peers, his learning became informal and isolated. His parents believed school systems were restrictive and harmful. Jaden took that belief and ran with it. He started posting anti-school messages online. He claimed schools were designed to brainwash kids. He said society would be smarter if everyone dropped out. Those posts weren't coming from a kid quietly questioning authority. They were coming from someone completely disconnected from how most people live. The problem wasn't curiosity. It was isolation. School isn't just about information. It's about social pressure, disagreement, being wrong, and learning how to exist around people who don't think like you. Jaden missed a lot of that, and it showed. Without peers to push back, his ideas were rarely challenged. Instead of being corrected, they were encouraged. Instead of being tested, they were praised. Over time, that created confidence without grounding. He spoke with certainty even when what he was saying didn't make sense.
Go around sometimes and I hang out with other people that are my age and they're just kind of just selfie. I'm just like, dude, like, oh my God, like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
Public interviews made this disconnect obvious. Jaden would talk about time moving differently, about energy, about ideas that sounded deep but fell apart under basic logic. That lack of challenge followed him into adulthood. When someone grows up never being told no, the first real no feels like an attack. And when criticism finally comes from the public, it feels cruel instead of corrective. Fashion became another outlet for this tension. Jaden started wearing skirts and gender-fluid outfits. Instantly, it became a headline. Some praised him, others mocked him. It turned into a culture war overnight. Will admitted that this phase scared him. He said it was terrifying as a parent, but he stayed hands-off. The problem was that the world didn't care about philosophy. Jaden took the backlash alone. The same parents who had shielded him from structure didn't shield him from judgment. He was left to deal with millions of opinions without the emotional tools to process them. What looked like freedom on the outside often felt like abandonment on the inside.
I just didn't understand and just how deep-rooted they are in hip-hop as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh, man.
I'm looking at this picture right here of Tupac on the shirt right there, and Tupac asked to marry my mom.
Yeah.
And she was like, we're Pac, like we're best friends.
Right.
The pressure inside the Smith family didn't come from one place. It came from old wounds that never healed. One of the biggest shadows hanging over the family was Tupac Shakur. Jada has always spoken openly about her deep bond with Tupac. It wasn't a secret. It was something she carried proudly. But that bond didn't exist in isolation. It affected the family dynamic.
Were you ever jealous of the love Jada had for Tupac?
Oh.
I thought you were gonna say no.
Oh my God, that dude. And that was in the early days.
At one point, Will Smith admitted he felt jealous of Tupac. He said it caused insecurity. He felt like he could never compete with that connection. That tension didn't just stay between adults. Kids pick up on things like that, even when no one explains them.
In my friend group, I'm the only polyamorous person, and I have the least out of all of my friends.
There was a moment that made a lot of people uncomfortable when it came out. Willow Smith, while still a child, wrote a letter to Tupac asking him to come back. She wrote that her mother was sad and needed him. That letter wasn't supposed to be public, but once it was, it raised questions.
She didn't understand my anxiety because she, growing up, had seen her friends die. Right. Like, she had been through so much stuff that, like, my issues to her kind of felt like smaller. And that was very frustrating for me as a child.
Willow's own experience with fame added another layer. She carried pressure most kids never face. Eventually, she reached a breaking point. She quit touring at a very young age and said she was done. By the time Jaden reached his mid-20s, the confusion around him stopped feeling new. It started feeling heavy. One of the clearest examples came during Paris Fashion Week. Jaden showed up wearing outfits that were impossible to ignore. In one appearance, his face was completely covered in paint. In others, his clothes were styled in ways that felt intentionally uncomfortable to look at. High fashion is used to strange looks, so standing out there takes effort. Jaden clearly made that effort. But instead of praise, the reaction was mostly mockery. People didn't talk about the meaning behind the outfits. They compared him to his father and asked why he couldn't just be normal. That comparison never goes away for him. Every move he makes gets measured against Will Smith, and Jaden knows it. In a later interview, Jaden said something that caught people off guard. He said he hoped future psychologists would study him. He said he wanted them to look back and try to understand what was wrong with him. That line showed awareness. Jaden knows something feels off. He knows people see him as damaged or unstable. What stood out was that he didn't talk about healing or fixing things. He talked about being analyzed after the fact, like he already sees himself as a case study instead of a person. That says a lot about how he views his own life. When someone grows up being watched constantly, it's easy to stop feeling real. In the same interview, he admitted something else that explains a lot. He said people often approach him just to talk about his father. Not his music, not his ideas, not his work, just his dad. He said it makes it hard to feel like his own person. That kind of isolation doesn't look like loneliness from the outside. He's famous. He's rich. He's surrounded by people. But real isolation is about not being known, not being seen for who you are. Jaden struggles with that constantly. Every attempt he makes to separate himself from his father ends up pulling him right back into the comparison. If he dresses normal, people say he's wasting his privilege. If he dresses extreme, people say he's embarrassing his family. There's no safe lane. At some point, the performances stop feeling like rebellion. They start feeling like armor. If people are going to laugh anyway, you might as well control what they laugh at. That's what Jaden seems to be doing now. The choices Will Smith made as a parent are written all over his son's life. What was meant to create freedom ended up creating confusion. Instead, this is not a story about rebellion or attention-seeking. It is a story about consequences that took years to show up. Do you think Jaden failed, or was he given too much freedom too early? Did Will Smith help shape his son, or did he lose control of the process? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this.